Greetings, my name is Blaze and welcome to my channel. If you've not been here before, I talk about thought, theory, and my interpretation when it comes to things that I'm interested in. Today's video is actually going to be a little bit of a rant. I've ranted about this before. Apparently there's a lot of individuals that want to call themselves Norse Pagans, but they're not Norse. To me it seems a little on the ridiculous side, and let me explain why. And let me give you some more information and background before y'all jump down my throats, because I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to be butthurt about me saying this. If you, as an individual, are not Asian, and let's say you want to practice Chinese Taoism or Chan Buddhism, specifically religious practices, cultural practices from China, sure, go for it. People do that type of stuff all the time. They practice other cultures' traditions because they find it fascinating or interesting, or they're drawn to it. However, calling yourself an Asian pagan just because you're studying that seems kind of weird, doesn't it? That's the same thing as calling yourself a Norse pagan if you're not actually Scandinavian or Norse. Norse is a language group. It refers to a specific region in the world, the Scandinavian region. We're talking about like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Greenland. That region is the Nordic Scandinavian region. So if you are not living there and that's where you were born and raised, you're not Norse. If you're not descended from those people, you're not Norse. Technically, even if you're descended from those people, you're not really Norse. Norse is that area, that language group. And a lot of people are studying some of the Reconstruction Revival stuff, the New Age heathenry, and they're saying that they're Norse pagans. Now, at the end of the day, you can call yourself whatever you want. I personally feel like it's kind of goofy. Like I said, it's no different than if you were to try to say you're an Asian pagan. I guess people are using it to try to signify their personal path. And that's the thing. I mean, technically today, a lot of the revival reconstruction stuff, people are using the term Norse paganism. To me, Norse heathenry, or just heathenry period, I think works just as well. But just because you're practicing Norse paganism doesn't change who you are or where you live. I'm an American. I might be descended from Norse people, Germanic, Slavic, Italian, and Irish. Those are the people I'm descended from my grandparents and whatnot. But that doesn't make me anything of that area. I'm not a Norse. I don't live there. And I barely speak Icelandic. I'm an American. So someone who's in those areas and they're practicing that stuff, that makes sense to me. The same thing with the term pagan. Pagan, I believe it comes from paganus or paganus. I don't know how it's pronounced, but apparently it's a Latin word. So that's sort of like that Italian Roman area, Rome. That term, people seem to apply it to anything that's polytheistic. And it's because typically the term refers to someone who is like rural, living in outside of the cities in that area. And that's why it's associated with polytheism today. Because when Christianity started spreading, it spread through the cities. So the people out in the sticks, out in their villages, the rural people, were still practicing their more archaic practices with some of the nature interactions with their deities and whatnot. So the pagan practices were the ones that were not converted to the Christianity that was in the cities. So I guess I see why people are using it, but I think there's other terms that can be used as well. Like I said, heathen kind of makes sense. Likewise, if you go all the way over to Asia, talking about like Shinto from Japanese practices, is that paganism? Do you want to classify it as paganism? Or Hinduism, do you want to call that paganism? It's like they have different terms for those. So likewise, why are we applying this term in all of these different regions? I guess because it's so close to those, like we have Italy and then different areas of Europe and Germania, and then you go a little bit more further north, and then you get into the Nordic area. So I guess there's some of that interaction, especially with where the Vikings, the Vikinger, traveled and they roamed around. But yeah, I don't get why people want to use that term. So I just wanted to point that out and rant about it. You don't have to agree with me. You can call yourself whatever you want. But I've always found it kind of silly. What are your thoughts? Go ahead and post below. Do you think people who are actually not Norse should call themselves Norse? I mean, like I said, I feel like it's the same thing as calling yourself Asian if you're not Asian. It's that regional language group. So why? What's wrong with just being you or just being a heathen? Interestingly enough, back in the day, as far as I can tell from the research I've done, they didn't really have a name for their practice. We're creating names today Because back then it was just kind of part of life. It was just something you did. They didn't really separate it out greatly like they do today. Today, we have very defined religions and religious priests that we go to versus back then. Yeah, you had more spiritual people and there were names for the spiritual people, but it was kind of part of everyday life. It's part of their culture. Again, we tap into cultures to recreate some of this. Anyway, thank you for watching. Catch you in the next one.